With the rise of shiny hunting challenge videos where people are literally putting handicaps on their hunts because finding a shiny Pokemon is too easy now, it raises the question, has shiny hunting gotten worse? Well, to answer this, we first gotta understand how shiny hunting started and its progression to its current state. Generation 2 is when they introduced shiny Pokemon, with the base odds being 1 in 8,192, and there was no abilities or items in the game that could increase your chances, except for one method. You see, back then Gen 2 used a system called DVs, which are basically the predecessors of IVs. If a Pokemon's DVs were a certain value, this is how the game determined when they were shiny. Why is this important? Well, ask yourselves, what happens when two Pokemon breed? Their stats are passed down, so if you have a shiny Pokemon in Gen 2, this increases its offspring's odds of being shiny down to 1 in 128 and 1 in 64 if you have shiny Ditto. And in Gen 2, they literally give you a free shiny, so if you make sure to catch a male shiny Gyarados, even if the Pokemon you want isn't in the same egg group, you can still change shiny breed until you get to the egg group you want. So why am I telling you this? Well, there's this viewpoint that shiny hunting has gotten too easy and lost most of its value because of it. And I will expand on this later, but just as shown, the generation that introduced shinies has one of the best hunting methods in terms of its odds. Which, by the way, is better than the best odds possible in Scarlet and Violet, even if you do all the shiny chance increasing methods, which only equals to a maximum chance of 1 in 512. Granted though, it does take around 15 minutes to hatch an egg in Gen 2, while in the newer games it can take up to 2 minutes for 5 eggs. But everything changed in the next generation. Gen 3 used the trainer ID number, secret ID number, and a personality value to determine if a Pokemon was shiny. Still with the same base odds, but this time there was no method to increase your chances at all. You could only increase your encounter rates and egg hatch rates with abilities and items. But even then, with the game's fast encounter sequences, if you have 4 games running, like this YouTuber, the Domination, you could actually get shinies faster than if you were just using the shiny charm in later generations. But if you only had 1 copy of the game like most people, then it's the hardest generation to shiny hunt in. This is where the elitist mindset for shiny hunting was born, since every shiny required an unreasonable amount of patience. But to some, that's what made the hunt so appealing. Normal and legendary Pokemon were very rare and you couldn't transfer your old ones from Gen 2 to Gen 3, so it was kind of like a complete shiny reset. But from this point onwards, Game Freak saw that people were spending months of their lives hunting for different colored Pokemon, so they looked to make it a bit easier in Gen 4 by introducing the Masura method and the Pokeradar, which if you managed to get a chain of 40, you'd have a 1 in 199 chance. Which was quite common, since if done right, you would only have a 2% chance of your chained Pokemon not being guaranteed, and even then, if your Pokemon is extremely common in the grass, it would further lower your chances of failing when you did hit that 2%. But still, shiny legendary Pokemon were only obtainable through soft resetting with the base odds, which further emphasized the rarity of their shinies, but non-legendary Pokemon's shinies were slowly getting easier to catch. This trend continued in Gen 5. Although they removed the Pokeradar, they increased the odds of Masura method to 1 in 1365, and in Black 2 and White 2 they finally introduced the shiny charm, which made your base odds a 1 in 2731 and a slight increase to the Masura method. Although these are some of the best odds we've seen as of yet, in order to get the shiny charm you had to complete the National Dex, which had 694 Pokemon. Keep in mind that the older Game Boy games not only were harder to find, but their prices were increasing dramatically, so if you wanted the higher odds, it was a struggle of its own to even get it. But Gen 6 is where shinies lost their value for many people, as it further looked to normalize shiny Pokemon, with setting the standard for future generations' base odds being now 1 in 4096, 1 in 1365 with the shiny charm, and 1 in 682 with the Masura method. They also added so many other methods in the game that further helped increase the odds. No longer did you hunt months for non-legendary shiny Pokemon, since there were so many other options. For some, the novelty of their older generation shinies that they brought into Gen 6 wore off, since many others online could get the same Pokemon in no time via these new easier methods. The old days of of shiny hunting videos being the super rare encounters that only a few could even record with the poor equipment we had in the early 2000s was a thing of the past. For once, people could try getting a shiny living dex and broadcast the entire journey, including every single hyped up reaction along the way, and this became the staple of shiny hunting content, which made much more people want to try it out for themselves. I mean, even 13-year-old me managed to catch so many with how accessible they were. But things got even worse for reasons no one expected. Websites started popping up where you can literally create your own Pokemon, anything from stats, moves, and if it's shiny, then download it directly to your 3DS by connecting to a specific server IP address. Online quickly became plagued with basically only hacked shiny Pokemon, and unlike the R4s and Game Sharks of the DS era, this was much easier to do, and YouTube videos helped spread the word. Sure, eventually some of these sites were taken down, but by then Gen 7 came around, further introducing methods like the SOS and wormhole hunting, which also had insane odds. If you thought that wasn't bad enough, the rise of Pokemon Go led to many previously rare shiny Pokemon like starters and especially legendaries, which previously most of them were locked at base rates respectively, but were being reduced down to the lowest odds we've ever seen. A 1 in 20 chance. And with these special research events, you can basically buy these super rare shiny legendary Pokemon. And the hype for seeing others react to shinies was completely gone since they were so easy to find. So how did Game Freak try fixing this problem? Limit shiny hunting methods and add more value to each shiny Pokemon. Gen 8 didn't really have any outstanding ways to shiny hunt, with the best new method being KOing 500 of the same glowing variant of a Pokemon to basically get the same odds as Masuda method. But the biggest change was that Game Freak added 2 new things for hunters to look out for. Each Pokemon now had a chance to randomly have a mark upon being caught. These marks have no more purpose than ribbons, but sometimes they change the title of a Pokemon upon entering battle. And these marks only have a chance of appearing in Pokemon being caught, so all the shinies brought over can't have them. Now a shiny would have way more value if it so happens to have a rare mark with it. Not only this, but they also added ultra shiny Pokemon, which are rarer to find but basically are the same thing. The only difference is that they have a bunch of squares as its glowing animation instead of stars. So clearly Game Freak wanted a reset, keeping the new Pokemon shiny form somewhat rare and hard to find, with the only real decent way to getting them through Masuda method, while giving potential value to all the Pokemon through marks if caught new. This trend continued right into BDSP, with basically having the same shiny hunting methods as the original games with only updated chances. But the only difference was that you could catch basically every Pokemon in the first 4 generations in the 2 games, and no legendary was shiny locked. Not only this, but the shiny charm was bugged. It didn't increase any odds except for Masuda method, and it still remains like this till today. Unknowingly, this was a blessing in disguise. The legendaries were locked at the base rates, making them once again the most rare shinies in the game if you didn't play Pokemon Go. But once again, the shiny hunting community was changing. Although these legendaries were hard to find, all of them weren't new. In fact, most of them you could shiny hunt in previous games like Ultra Sun and Moon and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So people finding the old shinies with big reactions just wasn't cutting it anymore. So then, Pokemon Legends Arceus releases being one of the easiest games to shiny hunt in, with buffs to the shiny charm odds, a mass spawn system making encounter rates higher than ever, and mass raid outbreaks making it nearly guaranteed a shiny for even rare Pokemon. But it seemed like many people were okay with this. Again, these were old Pokemon, so the novelty hasn't been there for years, and people were over just reacting to getting shinies now since we've all become so used to them. And you can thank this YouTuber and Lord Arceus for solidifying this change in the community. You see, the one legendary that's actually insanely rare is shiny Arceus, because before BDSP there was no legitimate way to hunt for it, and even now, to be able to catch it you first need to complete Legends Arceus' Pokédex. So in comes Nokimon. He picks the rarest Pokemon in recent times, creates an artificial challenge to further increase the intensity of the encounter, and expresses the struggle in the journey through a very well executed story. And for once, doing all this with zero reaction to finding the shiny. Again, finding shinies isn't interesting anymore, which is why Nokimon's style of videos is the Krabby Patty secret formula for soft resetting legendaries. But as interesting as these video formats are, you can't repeat the same challenge forever, so non-legendary shiny hunting needed its own attention. Channels like Nokimon and now many others following suit impose their own external challenges like finding shinies with no color, or having a restricted time, or whatever else to make these easier hunts more interesting. It's become much less about the shinies we find and more about how extreme or challenging the stories of finding and catching them are. And Scarlet and Violet's shiny hunting followed suit by making it even easier to find a shiny with all of its buffs. So then, has shiny hunting gotten worse? Well, undoubtedly the novelty of finding a shiny is completely gone and probably will never come back. That aura of them being these super rare items now only exists in a few Pokemon like Shiny Arceus. And this is a result of them making shiny hunting undoubtedly easier. But they needed to do this to keep shinies as a relevant part in the series, since every other feature became more accessible, and it's unreasonable to think that any sane person would hunt for a shiny Pokemon with a 1 in 8,000 chance in our current faster modern world other than for content. But to answer the question, you need to ask yourself, why do you shiny hunt? If you're someone who doesn't really care how a shiny looks but loves how rare and long it takes to find it, then yes, shiny hunting has gotten worse because it's nowhere near as difficult or uncommon as it used to be. You'll probably need to keep shiny hunting in gens 2 to 5 for that feeling of accomplishment. But if you're someone who just cares about having the cool different color palettes of your favorite Pokemon and not really interested in how you go about finding it or how long it takes, then shiny hunting has only gotten better. But for a player like me, after the desensitization period of Gen 6 to 7, I went a long time not really caring about shiny hunting, but ever since BDSP I did get back into it. I need to have the shiny odds relatively decent for me to try attempting it for fun, though I do think getting like 3 to 4 shinies in under an hour with some of the shiny boosts in Scarlet and Violet is way too easy. They should keep legendary Pokemon with having base odds, but provide an appropriate amount of methods to get normal Pokemon at a fair rate. But I can see why everyone enjoys these newer style of storytelling shiny hunting videos, even though finding a shiny isn't hard. It takes so much more effort to keep viewers engaged long after the shiny has been found in comparison to just hyped reactions. And these channels are all amazing at creating stories through the shinies they find, and it'll be interesting to see how they and the community continue to change the interests in shiny hunting in the future. Check out our similar style of shiny hunting videos here.